Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tune. Today we are going to be working on Christine's blue Grom here, and we're going to be installing the sucker punch kit from GromFatherz. And I'm going to show you kind of the parts that come with it, and we're going to put them into the bike today and see what kind of power difference that it makes. This bike only has about 48 miles on it. We bought both of these bikes brand new. She got the blue one, I got the green one, and well, let's just say it's no fun being stock or staying stock. So we have changed quite a bit of stuff on these bikes already. We both got this cheap eBay bride seat. They're like 120 bucks. A lot of reviews say that they're kind of wobbly. They don't fit that good, but these two that we got for our bikes have been great. We put a Yoshimura fender eliminator kit on it. A set of Pro Taper mini bars. So these are the Honda Pro Taper minis. It has a set of Vortex grips on it and some eBay levers. And just like little other cosmetic stuff, we've done the flush mount front blinkers we did on this bike, and also did some mirror block offs that you can just buy on eBay. These are pretty cheap. They just thread into the factory mirror holes. And then we did the TST flasher relay, so the blinkers still work with LED lights. So those are kind of the mods that are done on this one, other than a exhaust, which we already did a video on as well. This is the Amazon or eBay $100 special exhaust, and that's what's running on this bike. It sounds great. Everything works pretty good. So, but I'm going to show you kind of the response right now. I wanted to kind of start it up and give it a couple revs, show you guys kind of the response, the throttle response, and just kind of how quick it revs. I want to see if the sucker punch kit improves that at all. I'm expecting to gain some torque and some high-end power from this kit, and supposedly it doubles the factory horsepower. So that's what we're going for. These bikes, we did dyno my green one, and they make right around 8 horsepower. Between like 6 and 9, depending on the dyno and what gear you're in and all that kind of stuff. But we do have a pretty good curve at the shop on the dyno for these things, so we should be able to dyno them after we do these mods as well, and kind of see where the power is from there. But here we are, like I said, 48 miles on this bike. And I did actually just get done taking it for a ride. I kind of rode it around the block a couple times just to warm it up so I can drain the oil. Because we're gonna do some other stuff to it as well, which I'll show you in another video. But I want to get the oil out of it so we can do the other upgrades as well. And I always like to warm up my engines before I drain the oil, so the oil's a little thinner and it flows out of the engine better. So honestly, pretty snappy. It's not bad in stock form. It's really not. It's pretty crisp. I do notice, like currently with the bike in stock form with the exhaust, coming off of idle, it's got like a little bit of a stumble to it. It's got to kind of get some RPM in it before it wants to be responsive. So I don't know if the GromFatherz kit's going to help that at all, but we're just going to install it and kind of see how it is. Before and after kind of thing. I know I don't really have a whole lot of riding clips with the bike currently, but I will tell you the most speed I can get out of this bike with completely stock gearing and everything like that is about 60 miles an hour, and that's like tapped, you know what I mean? And it'll hold like a consistent 50. It'll hold consistent 50 mile an hour, like just pegged, you know, with some wind and sitting upright, but I'm hoping to improve that quite a bit. So without further ado, I'm going to get the parts laid out and then pick up the camera again and kind of show you what all comes with this sucker punch kit, or what I all got with the sucker punch kit, and we'll go from there. Alrighty guys, so I'm going to show you some of the parts here with the sucker punch kit. I'm going to kind of go over all the parts that I'm going to put on the bike. So when you order from GromFatherz, you get most of this stuff. I think he actually does like full builds and stuff for people too, but I opted to just get some of the stuff. I didn't get everything through him. There's some other parts here that I'm going to be putting on the bike, such as a 4th bearing support and a Takagawa oil pump. So I'm going to do those as kind of preventative things, just to kind of keep the bike happier with all these new mods that we're putting on. So To start off, we got a piston from DHM here. So this is the high compression factory bore piston with the rings, the wrist pin, and the circlips. And this is a little box that came in. This is a custom ground camshaft from GromFatherz. So this is the cam that we're going to be using. Don't know the specs. I'm sure these guys don't share specs or anything like that on these cams, but that's the cam that we're going to be running. And then this is the cylinder head. This is kind of where the magic's going to happen, I think. This is a factory 2-valve cylinder head that has been shaved for higher compression and ported. So he kind of went in here, cleaned up a lot of the ports. So it's probably kind of hard to tell on camera, but it is ported. Looks very nice. And then this piece right here that bolts on the intake side is actually called a rev wedge. So I bought the rev wedge and the isolator from GromFatherz as well. So the isolator is pretty much just like the bridge between the wedge, which is where your injector goes and stuff like that, your fuel lines, pretty much where like your throttle cable bolts up, stuff like that is going to all bolt onto the rev wedge, which is all port matched. The isolator, the rev wedge, and the throttle body are all port matched together. And this is a back cut throttle body, so it's kind of like a tapered, you know, the arrow kind of taper into the motor instead of currently what's on the bike, which is kind of just like some hard, sharp turns and stuff like that. That's kind of the goal of this stuff, is just to kind of make it a little smoother going into the engine. So that's what this stuff is. I'm hoping it will give me a good amount of horsepower. So now, these are also the lash caps that he gives you. So these are for the valve lash caps. Put those with the head, and then new spark plug, and this full stand next ECU, which I'll probably make a totally different video on if we do. So that's the ECU that we're going to be controlling everything. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. There's some other stuff that I'm going to be putting in. The gasket kit that came with it, and then I got a 6-plate clutch and 60% over clutch springs for the added horsepower, as well as a Chimera 6, you know, this billet clutch plate. So those parts are also going to go on. So in the meantime, I'm going to get to work here and get the rest of this bike tore down. This is kind of what it looks like currently. I just pulled all the fairings off of it, which is pretty easy, just some bolts around the fairings to get all that stuff off. And I pulled the air box. Now next we're going to be getting to pulling the factory throttle body, injector, fuel line, TPS, throttle cables, and then once all that stuff's off, I'm going to move on to the clutch cover here so we can get the chain off of the gear here so we can remove the cylinder head. Got to remove all these little sensors and stuff too. There's a temp sensor and then an O2 sensor on the other side. So we're going to get to work here, pull some of those bolts apart, get a lot of these pieces off, and get this cylinder head, jug, and factory piston out of here. All right, guys, moving ahead a few steps, and I got the engine tore apart here. I have the cylinder, the head, the piston, all that stuff removed. Had to remove like the timing chain guide and tensioner. All that stuff's kind of sitting over here. The cam gear cover, cam gear, all that stuff's kind of sitting right there. Got that all situated. This is the little tensioner bolt. Got the injector removed. This little clip guy holds it in. Yeah, just a lot of little stuff here that got to take apart. So now I'm going to be reassembling. I had to take the DHM piston and gap the rings. So I did gap the rings to 9 thousandths on the top ring, and then I went a little bit big on the second ring because the second ring actually filed a lot faster than the first one did. So the second one's a little big at 13 thousandths, but I think it'll be fine. I've ran a lot larger on turbo cars. I know I want to try to squeeze every bit of power out of this thing, so the tighter the ring gap, or the closer the ring gap, the better it's going to be. So now I just got the piston installed into the old cylinder. This is the DHM piston with the rings. So I'm sticking the piston in just far enough to where I can get the wrist pin slid through. I have one circlip installed. Now I'm going to slide the wrist pin through the piston and the rod and install this whole assembly onto the bike as one unit. So I think it's easier doing it this way versus trying to feed the piston while it's on the rod into the cylinder. I think it's going to be easier doing it this way. So want to do that. My camera's kind of dead, so I've been kind of skipping a lot of stuff, so I apologize about that. But I think I might actually reuse the factory base gasket because this bike has 45 miles on it, and this base gasket is like mint. And I feel like I would risk trying to pull this off. I feel like it wouldn't seal as good unless I took a lot of time cleaning it off. I think this gasket, the way it is right now, I'm going to reuse it just because it is in like perfect condition. And I think, like I said, taking it off and stuff, tampering with the surface, is probably going to be more detrimental than just rerunning this gasket. So I'll put a new head gasket on, but this base gasket I'm going to leave alone just because it's in such good shape. So yeah, we're going to get to installing this stuff. I have to swap all the stuff from the cylinder head too, so I had to pull the rockers out of the head on both sides for intake and exhaust. Had the cam or the rocker valve covers off here. I had to pull this little guy that holds them in out. This is the stock isolator, and this is the stock intake manifold and throttle body that we're not going to be using anymore. So yeah, once I get the cylinder and stuff back installed, I might talk about assembling the head. I had to take the old O2 sensor out of the head as well. I'm going to swap all that stuff over to the new GromFatherz head, which I actually paid an extra $50 for him to send in a head versus me having to send my head to him and then wait for it to come back. He actually had a head there and he sent it to me, so huge shout out to him. Kenny. Alright guys, it's a couple days later. Got the bike up and running, got it all assembled. My camera was having some issues, and sorry I didn't really film a little bit more, but I kind of wanted to compile all this into like a 20-minute video and see the results of the bike. So we got everything back installed. I have probably about 60 miles on the setup so far. It is running a PCX 150cc injector, which is larger than factory, and pretty much all the other parts that I showed you guys. The intake is currently wide open. There's no, I don't have a filter on it or anything. It's just raw, wide open. I got that clutch installed. I got it all adjusted right. And I also got that fourth bearing or second bearing, third bearing, whatever it is, from Takagawa installed onto the stator there. I swapped to a 14-tooth front sprocket on the bike. And let me tell you, she's a ripper. Like this thing, noticeable improvement over factory. I did run it with the stock gearing and 14-tooth, and I think it really didn't make a whole lot of difference, you know, swapping gearing around. So I may try a 13-tooth and a 16-tooth and just compare, like, you know, what's more fun on the bike, but that's for a different day. I am running the full stand next ECU, which I don't really think I'm recommending because currently the bike is cold and it doesn't want to start. Gotta like hold the throttle. There we go. Now it's running. And it'll probably idle. You guys can tell it's got some chop to it now with the cam. But it is super temperamental when it's cold. I spent like 2 days tuning this thing so far, and we're about to ride out to the shop and put it on the dyno and see kind of what power it gained. This is on 91 pump gas. I should probably have 93 or better in it, but I only have 91 in my city right now. And I'm gonna do a response test and stuff once we get to the shop. Hopefully I remember, because I know I did the response stock. But like when it's cold, it's like, just because it's over fueling, and no matter what I do on the compensation tables and stuff like that, I can't get it to run worth a damn with this next ECU until it's warmed up. Like once it's above like 170 degrees, it runs perfect. It's just like the warm up stuff kind of sucks, in my opinion. So we're gonna ride these things out to the shop, take my stretched Grom, which is stock, and then Christine's gonna dust me on this thing. Another thing I kind of wanted to mention with the sucker punch kit is my buddy has the DHM cam, stock piston, stock head. I think he just did the cam, and he has 13-tooth gearing and dual exhaust, like the big dual exhaust that sits under the seat. And his bike is an OG Grom. It's a little bit more broken in, etc. And this thing runs away from him. And then obviously against the stock bike, it just runs away from it too. And I plan on doing some more like you know, helmet cam footage so you guys can actually see like real world stuff, but we're just gonna do dyno testing and stuff today in this video and kind of introduce these parts and show what the bike is capable now versus what stock Groms do. So we'll see ya when we get out to the shop. All right guys, it's the next day and I got the Grom out here at the shop, the blue Grom that we just did the sucker punch kit on from GromFatherz, and been tuning on it the last couple days out on the street, and I just think personally that this PCX 150cc injector is a little bit too much for this bike. I have the max amount of fuel I can get pulled out of it, you know, in the lower RPM, which is kind of where this thing doesn't really need a ton of fuel. It needs more fuel up top, and when it's cold it just over fuels really bad. So I might actually be switching back to the stock injector and seeing if I can get away with running the stock injector, because currently I'm using like 22% of this injector at wide open throttle at 10,000 RPM. So I think I might be able to get away with the stock injector, and I'm going to test that to show you guys, but another day. Currently when the bike is warmed up, you know, 180 degrees, it's fine, doesn't have any stutters or anything like that, but when it's cold, man, she's a little angry. But I have the Grom strapped onto the dyno here, and we're gonna spin it up and see what it makes for power compared to what the stock bike did. So stock bike pull here is gonna be lit up on the screen. So this is the stock pretty much power curve, what it looked like. You can see that this is the torque curve, you know, peak torque around 5,000, then it just nosedives right after that. So that's kind of why these things just don't really like to rev in stock form, and this sucker punch kit with the cam and the ported work, the rev wedge, all that kind of stuff, I'm hoping it's going to want to rev a little bit higher. So don't get caught up in the numbers, but that one made 9 horsepower, 9.3 peak. There's some horsepower going down the highway right now. Anyways, that was 9.3 horsepower and peaking power at 6,200 RPM for horsepower. So we're gonna try, these are the same settings on the dyno and everything like that, and we're gonna try again, and we'll see what it makes. Alright guys, so first pull, the bike was like 170 degrees. Believe it or not, this bike runs better because of the way that the ECU and the injector and everything is set up right now. It actually runs better when it's like 200 degrees because the fueling just gets happier at low RPM and stuff like that. But right off the bat, guys, we almost doubled the factory horsepower, and man, did we give this thing a power curve. So these are gonna compare the two runs, the stock bike versus what we have now. So this red and blue line is the factory power. This blue and light blue are the new power. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding, guys. This thing is a whole new bike, and you could probably hear it when it gets some RPM in it. It just wants to keep going, and it just wants to rip. And you can see here that we cut the thing off stock form about 9,000 RPM, 9,200 or so. That was 11,500 RPM on that run right there. So, and you can see here we're over 15 horsepower. We made 16.5 horsepower, and it peaked at 10,300 RPM. So that just kind of tells you what kind of an animal this thing is now. Unfortunately, the power curve down here, we lost some power. We definitely lost some power below like 6,000 RPM. And I kind of can feel that on the bike when I am, you know, in 4th gear, kind of going uphill, it doesn't even want to accelerate if I'm going like 45. I have to kick it down a couple gears to get it to light back up. Where in stock form, I think it might have had a little bit more like low end grunt. So I think you're losing that with this setup. But I think if we end up big boring this, because this is still stock bore, if we end up big boring this bike, we'll get that power back down low. So that's kind of my plan with it, if I, you know, melt this piston out of it or anything like that. Because to be honest, the way that I've been tuning it with that frickin' 150cc injector, it's been a struggle. So but once it clears out, it really does rip. We're gonna do one more run and see if we can get that down low power to come back up, because like I said, once this thing's warmed up, I feel like it's got better response and everything. So we're gonna compare those two right now, and I'll let you know how it goes. And like I said, I've been tuning it on this. Got a wave, somebody honked down the highway. So I've been tuning it with my phone here on this next ECU. And like I said, I might try the stock injector just to see if we can get some more response out of it and just have an overall better running bike, because right now this injector I think is too big for this setup. So currently 185 degrees, I think that'll be perfect. And I did tune this bike with a wideband. I did not rely on that factory sensor trying to tune it, because it was saying 12.5 or 12.8 air fuel, and on the actual wideband, when I put an O2 bung on this thing, it was reading like 10.5 air fuel. So it was definitely a lot richer. And now where I know the fueling is in the mid 12s to around 13.0, the sensor on the bike reads like 14. So that's just something else to consider. But I do have the map really lined out now. May have to change it all and retune it again once I put the stock injector back in, but I think it'll be a ton of fun, and it is a ton of fun. I drove the bike out here into the wind, and I drove my other bike when it was stock, same thing. I was going into the wind on the way out here, and I could get like 45, 50 miles an hour out of the bike, and I could hold a consistent 60 into the wind with this bike, with the sucker punch kit. So after the you know, on a calm wind, no wind at all, on flat ground, I got 72 mile an hour out of it, and I bet you with a little tailwind, maybe a little downhill, I could get 75, maybe closer to 80. There is rumors of guys running 80 miles an hour with this kit, but I don't know if I quite believe it, because unless they got a frickin' 45-degree angle hill that they're running on, which they probably are, but it still is a ton more fun, and it's definitely easier to speed on this bike now, for sure. Like I said, it's a ton of fun, but we're gonna do one more rip on the dyno and see kind of where the power ends up on the second one, now that she's got a little heat in it. Another thing is, GromFatherz Kenny actually told me, he's like, get off the bike when you're dynoing it, like stand next to it or something like that. But it's tough to get this dyno rolling with a Grom. So I might try to just like hover off of the bike this time and see if it picks up any power on the dyno, you know, instead of me sitting on it loading everything. Kind of makes sense, but I'm gonna try it out and just go from there. Alrighty guys, so there we have it. I might be playing with it some more here soon, but we definitely did increase some horsepower. Almost double, not quite, but almost there. And this also has the Amazon exhaust. It might pick up if I put a Hindle on it, but I'm not sure. That may be another test that we can do, as well as just try that stock injector and just see kind of where we're at, because I personally don't think we would run out of that stock injector, but we'll have to find out. I also have some race gas over there that we could try and just do some more testing with it. But super fun to play with these things, and it was a ton of fun to work on it, build it, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I have another build coming up on the other Grom, So be sure to subscribe if you guys are new. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and drop a comment down below and let me know what you want me to test next on the Groms. I think it'd be cool because we do have access to the dyno here. It is kind of cool having a dyno to be able to do stuff like this and show you guys. And like I said, we'll probably get some riding footage, but the riding footage is a little tougher for me to do because I don't really have like a mic and all that kind of stuff. But we might be able to do some like speed runs with it and see kind of how fast we can get it going. Like I said, on the GPS, we got about 75 miles an hour out of it so far. So can only go up from here, I would assume. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a great night and a better tomorrow. We will see you later.